how to get into the UFC or Bellator, PFL 1, how to become a professional fighter and not be broke. Disclaimer, I'm not a professional fighter yet, but this video isn't for people like me. This video is for people that are 17, 18, 19, probably up to like 22, 23, where you're still young, you don't really have a lot of responsibilities. Ideally, you live with your parents, so you don't have a lot of bills or responsibilities, right? And this is just going to be like a breakdown of how I would do it. How would I go from being like a 19-year-old kid who doesn't have any kids, who isn't married, doesn't have a lot of bills, mortgage, all that type of stuff, right? And I'm going to break down step by step and just give you like a path to follow so that you can make it happen if that's what you want to make happen, right? So the first thing that I would do, step 1, is I'm gonna assume you probably have a job. If not, get a job. And it makes it really easy if you live with your parents. You work a full-time job for 3 months, right? You should be able to do this without any issue. I'd get a full-time job, or if you have one, and I would start saving money, right? I would probably save, first off, enough to buy a either really solid used car, like a Corolla or Camry, or Toyota, Honda, probably, right? Just for the reliability aspect of it, right? I would do that. Then, after I have my car, and it makes it easier if you already have a car, right? Some people's parents buy them cars, mine didn't, but some people's parents buy them cars. So if you have a car, even if it's got a payment, you're already step 1 done. Then I would save enough money to buy, or excuse me, not to buy, to save between $3,000 and $5,000, right? Somewhere in that neighborhood, right? This is to give you like a runway, right? Where you can cover what you need to cover for, if you really living cheap, man, $5,000 can go a long way even today, right? So $3,000 to $5,000, somewhere in there. And then I would move. And I would move to very specific places. I would either move to, number 1, Las Vegas. It's not personally where I would go, but Vegas for like just direct contact with the UFC is probably number 1. But I would move to either, my first choice would be Fort Lauderdale in Florida, right? That's where ATT is out there in Florida, and they've just got some fucking, I think they've got champions there now. So I'd move, me personally, I would move to, Fort Lauderdale. But the other options are Phoenix, Las Vegas. Austin is getting really big for MMA. I know that Houston has got a big MMA scene. There's one more. You could also do Tampa or Orlando. They've got some really good gyms there with really good fighters. And I would move there, right? And then I would, me personally, just because I'm like that, I live in my car. No question about it, no two ways about it. I live in my car, especially, that's the reason that I'm mentioning these cities, because there are cities in other parts of the country that also have really good MMA scenes, but they're cold, right? And so the idea here is to be able to do it as cheaply as possible without freezing your ass off. So me, I'd move to Fort Lauderdale or one of those other cities. I'd live in my car. excuse me, and I would get a job at a restaurant, specifically a restaurant that maybe doesn't necessarily have to be like, a kind of vegan restaurant or like a specifically healthy focused restaurant, but I would get a job at a restaurant that has healthier options, right? So if they have, you can look on the menu and see, okay, they serve rice and they serve chicken, right? Or they serve potatoes and they serve, hamburger patties, right? It's just something that gives you options that are healthy, and I'd work there because working in a restaurant, you have food that is readily available, and I'd stay away from chain restaurants, and I'd, look more towards like just privately owned restaurants, because most restaurants you go into, they're gonna feed you, and they'll feed you as much as you want, as much as you can eat, right? And so working at a restaurant, your food is, free at that point, especially if you work in the kitchen, right? You work in a restaurant and you work in the kitchen, even if you're washing dishes, being a prep cook, being a line cook, right? Food is just there. It's free or super cheap, right? And that just takes that burden off of, having to spend money on food. That way you can spend money on, maybe some supplements that you need, or if you need to get extra pieces of gear, right? And then I would, obviously, another option you might have, depending on what city you're in. So like down in South Florida, they have a lot of them. They're called efficiencies. They're basically a bedroom with a sink, with a bathroom. They're a bedroom with a bathroom and a microwave and a hot plate. That's also a really good option. So I would do that, right? And then I would join one of these gyms, right? And, down in like, what I'll do is I'll make like an entire PDF that you can download for free that breaks down all of this. And even in the different cities, I'll put the different gyms that are there that will be best to go to. I'll break down what you can expect cost of living wise as far as food and stuff like that in each city, and I'll put that all together and I'll put it on my website, and you can just have that for free, right? So I would join some of the top gyms in these cities, and then I'd go in there. But what I wouldn't do right off the jump is I wouldn't walk in there and just right off the jump be like, yeah, man, I want to be a fucking, UFC champion of the world, right? They hear it every day. They don't want to hear it. They're not interested in it. They want to see people training consistently, right? What these coaches want to see, these managers want to see, is they want to see someone walk in there who's training daily, who makes it clear, right? So this is what you say. This is the magic words when you walk into one of these gyms to train, and this is what you say so that they clearly get that you want to fight, but you're not just the same guy walking in saying, yeah, I want to be UFC champ, but I don't have any fights and probably not a crazy amount of experience, right? It helps if you do have some training experience, a couple years in jiu-jitsu or whatever, right? But you walk in there and you say, hey, how you doing? My name's such and such. I know that this is a really good gym with a lot of killers, and I would really love to train here, right? And that's it. And you just start training. And, after a couple months of you being consistent and you showing improvement and you showing that you're just about that life, either people in the gym will start to ask you, or the coaches will start to ask you, like, hey man, you want to fight, right? Or you can even ask after a couple months, you just pull the coach aside, whoever the main coach is, and just be like, hey man, I've been coming here for a couple months. I really enjoy the team. I enjoy everybody. Everybody's been great to me. I would really like to take a fight and do some fights. You know, do you think I'm ready? Or if not, if I'm not ready yet, what would you say I need to do to get ready, right? And I'll do anything you say. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who is consistent, dedicated, and has the attitude of, this is the coach, this guy knows what he's doing, and I want to let him help me become successful, right? Because if you approach it that way, where you're like, look, I'm doing this for the coach and the team just as much as I'm doing it for myself, they'll go over the moon for you, right? They'll bend over backwards trying to help you, right? And then keep doing that, man. I keep plugging along, training, working, right? And I would just do everything I can to show up to every single class. And then what I'd do is, before all this, I would actually make sure that I had a really solid iPhone, maybe a MacBook, right? And I would set up a IG page and a YouTube channel, and maybe whatever other platforms you'd want to use. And I'd do what I'm doing right now, man. I would document everything. Document living in your car. Document, this is me driving to Florida to go, live in my car and become a professional fighter. I'd document, showing up to work. I'd document workouts. I'd document sparring and training. I'd document meals. I'd document supplements, just everything, right? And I'd try to start building that social platform from day one, right? And then I'd do that. I would start training. I'd start taking amateur fights, any amateur fight I could get my hands on, doesn't matter, kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, right? I would do all of it, right? I would do a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions, right? The great thing about jiu-jitsu competitions is that they are pretty cheap. You can usually sign up for one for between $75 and $100, right? And I would do as many of those as I can, right? Because the thing about jiu-jitsu competitions, right, and I would even do those first, right? Because the thing about grappling competitions is that the first time you do it, a lot of times you're gonna go in there and in your brain, your initial thought is, oh, this will be just like rolling. But it's not even close, man. Like, the level of intensity that some of these dudes bring to these jiu-jitsu competitions is like just unbelievable, man. I mean, the shit, to them is like life or death, right? So I'd go in there and I'd get that competition experience, and I would develop that just animal need to, be competitive and win, and, not fight dirty, but be nasty, right? That's like when I did my first jiu-jitsu competition, that was my biggest downfall, is that I just, was like, oh shit, these guys are being fucking nasty, right? And so, I developed the attitude of like, I'll do whatever, man. I'll push the face. I'll, maybe turn it into a slap a little bit when I'm going to, grab the head, just not be dirty about it, but just, be a little bit nasty, right? And I would just keep, going along at it. I keep fighting. I keep, building my platforms. And then, eventually, if you have a good record, if you're 6-0, 7-0, 7-1, right, you are probably gonna get some offers for some pro fights. They're not gonna pay probably shit, right? I mean, maybe $1,000 for your first few fights if you're lucky. But you start out as a pro with some, regional promotions, and then you move on and you get a pro record of maybe 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 5-1, 6-1, something like that, with good finishes, and it just looks like you're clearly more skilled and just outclassing everybody else that you're fighting at the level of pro that you're fighting, right? And eventually, especially if you go to one of these big gyms that already has those fighters on the roster, it's just going to be so much easier because people are going to be talking about, like, hey man, have you seen this kid out of fucking, Austin, or this kid out of fucking, Fort Lauderdale or whatever, right? He trains at my gym. You have to check him out, and you will get attention, right? And then, the rest is history, right? Like I said, I haven't got there yet. I have to take a little bit of a different path just because of my life situation, because I have kids and I have, just grown up adult things going on, right? But, if I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that's how I do it, man. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit of work, and I'm going to put all of this into like a step-by-step broken down PDF with all the information you'd need in order to, do this, right? And, if I see one kid follow this, like, blueprint and, actually succeed with it, man, that would just be fucking so cool, right? This is like an investment for, 5 years in the future. So, you can check out the website if you want. I'll have that PDF on there. I also have my free ebook, 90 Days to Transform Your Life, if you're someone who's, overweight, out of shape, depressed, and, just being lazy and doesn't have any direction or discipline in their life. I've also got coaching on there. I'm giving away 10 free coaching sessions right now, so anybody who wants to hop on a call with me, it's totally free. And, if you want, drop a like, hit subscribe. I appreciate y'all, man. God bless.